This week's portion, Toldot, presents us with a very serious religious challenge. The assumption is that characters that are presented in the Torah should be upstanding citizens. They should represent the highest ideals of morality and ethics. And so this portion, Toldot, turns that assumption on its head because we find the birth of the twins, Jacob and Esau, and immediately we are told that Rebekah prefers Jacob and Isaac prefers Esau. And there are two events which highlight the scheming that takes place behind the scenes to ensure that Jacob, even though he is the younger of the twins by just a few seconds, is able to become the firstborn son in legal terms. One day Esau returns from the field very hungry, and Jacob is cooking a stew, and Jacob says, "Sure, Esau, you can have some of this stew, but sell me your birthright." And Esau hungrily agrees in order to satiate his hunger. And then later in the portion, the more famous event in which Isaac wants to bless Esau, Rebekah overhears Jacob, disguises as his twin brother, goes into his blind father, and even though Isaac, we sense, knows that it is Jacob, he gives Jacob the blessing that he intended to give to Esau, which then leads to further events that we read in the portion. So how is it that Jacob, who participates in these schemes in order to receive the blessing in such an underhanded way, how does Jacob become such an important religious figure in our tradition? Certainly in the Torah, the author wants to have us understand that God is behind the scenes and that God knows in the end that Jacob needs to be chosen. But for us, perhaps the lesson is that we all have our faults. Sometimes we act like Jacob and participate in schemes such as this in our life. But despite that, if we know deep down how we should truly act, what the appropriate religious, moral, and ethical behavior is, then we can rise above our faults and become as good as possible. Perhaps that's the lesson that is intended for us to learn from this week's portion, Toldot. Shabbat Shalom.